All right. Hello. What's your name and your grade and your major?
My name is Joseph Gassensmith. I am a freshman architecture major with a minor in real estate development and political science.
Oh, cool. Nice to meet you, Joseph.
Nice to meet you.
So, we'll get into the questions that I have here. The first question is, where are you from?
I am from Noblesville, Indiana.
Oh, okay. We're close. How diverse is the community of Noblesville?
Noblesville, it's not a super diverse community. My high school was, one of those schools where it's like 90% white. Um, we have a large Hispanic population though, but other than that, it is not a very diverse community. It's definitely, the term white suburbia kind of fits us pretty well.
Hmm. Good to know. So in it doesn't just have to be in school, but in general, I know in class we've talked a lot about like microaggressions and learned about those. So have you ever been subjected to any microaggressions, and if so, what are they? And how did it make you feel if you were?
This is tough because I have white privilege, so I haven't really been subjected to them other except for maybe one time when, but someone said that I can handle spice really well for a white person, but that was also coming from a white person, so I don't know if you could define that even as a microaggression, but I mean, it didn't really make me feel upset, partially probably because I didn't know what a microaggression was at the time. Um, but personally, I've never really had to deal with it. Um, just because of the privilege that I have because of the color of my skin. I don't really face injustice because of that, which is, I mean, it's sad that people even face injustice because of the color of their skin and have to face these microaggressions, but no, I've not really experienced them.
I agree. Um, so okay, you did say that. Well, first, what grade, or I guess when, around what time did that happen?
This was like this was like my sophomore year in high school.
Oh.
So I'm just some dumb high schooler. I don't know what that is. So I don't know. I didn't even pay any attention to it. Shocked I even remember it, to be honest.
Um, no, that's I'll just kind of insert a little bit of peace of mind. I didn't know about them either at the same time. Like I didn't know what microaggressions were until we talked about them really in class. So that was my first time hearing about it. Um, well, so what are some areas of society that you didn't realize were racialized or are racialized?
Hmm. Trying to think because I like to think I have a pretty good knowledge on this thing, especially as an architecture major, learning about in high school, learning about like urban renewal and redlining and how that, I mean, that kind of plays a part in almost everything. But I'm trying to, this is a tough question. That I didn't know was racialized.
We can come back to it too, actually.
Yeah,
We can, okay. Or we
yeah, I
can,
would think about that one.
um, so actually I meant to ask you this. I'm gonna backtrack just a little. So what microaggressions, in regards to microaggressions, have you ever committed any microaggressions, or um yeah,
I'm sure
if you did commit any, then do you know, can you give us like an example or a time?
I'm sure I have in the past. I'm like probably I'm sure in high school I said things that would be taken as microaggressions. I can't really give you any examples because I'm not for sure. Um, but I'm sure I have, and I'm sure I did not mean to, obviously.
Right.
But uh, now, like, look, because I didn't even know what a microaggression was until class started, and really I learned what it was. And now looking back, I'm sure there have been times where I've committed them or even just like internalized them almost, where like I don't verbally say it, but like I think something. Um, I think it's important also for people to recognize that they've may have committed them in the past and like take responsibility for it, hold themselves accountable. Because like now I'm able to like obviously I don't ever
You're good. You're good.
I don't do them anymore. Let's say that. I don't and like if I'm about to say something that could be taken as offensive, I can stop myself now because I have the education now of what a microaggression is and some things that could be classified as that. And but to answer your question in short terms, yeah, I'm sure I have in the past, but I'm glad that I'm educated on the topic now.
So speaking of being educated on this topic, and you talked about how you know how to like catch yourself or stop yourself from doing them now. Um, how do you think as a society we can teach people how to catch themselves or educate people on microaggressions? Because for me personally, I know, like I said, I didn't learn about them until now. Do you think there is a way that somehow we can educate or teach people about them early on so that they know?
I think I'm a huge proponent of just education in general. So I think a really easy way to be able to educate people on the topic would just to introduce classes like social justice classes early on, say middle school, just educate people about these topics and so they can do better. And like I think our class honors 199. I think it should be common core curriculum for the entire university. And obviously it's a more advanced level social justice class, but like you could, for lack of better words, you could dumb it down for like a middle school level and find examples that middle schoolers can relate to and implement a course requirement like that in all public schools. Because I think if you educate people early on the topic and then you keep educating them year after year, like more and more, I think we're less likely to see as horrible race issues and racism issues that we have now. Like I think um, for a really prevalent example, I think all police officers should be required to have 4-year degrees because in Camden, New Jersey, they required that, and their systemic racism issues. I'm not going to say it's gone because it's clearly not, but they've gone down, and police brutality issues have gone down because they're more educated on how to deal with people having mental health crises and how to they're just more educated on how to deal with people and how to communicate with people of different walks of life. Because I know even just coming to Ball State, I've been exposed to so many more people than I would have if I stopped at my high school education. So education. I went off on a tangent there, but
No, you're good. You're good. That made me think of some other things too. So, no, that's good. Education is very important. Yes, it is. And it teaches a lot. But I know you talked about the police, and it made me think about what is your take on defunding the police, or the slogan defunding the police?
I am also I am all for it. Uh, my cousin, my cousin is a social worker, and I have actually talked to her about this topic as well. And so she's all for it. Obviously, when it comes of the part of defunding the police, where it's um, focusing like on mental health issues, how police should not be sent to mental health issues, and it should be a social worker or paramedics or someone with medical training. Um, but to answer your question shortly, I am all for it. Like, yes.
That's good to
Um,
know.
I think I think the phrase defund the police is what throws people off. Like because I don't like the phrase defund the police because I think it doesn't explain I don't think it does a good job at explaining what it actually means.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean just completely getting rid of police forces. it's reallocating funds from police forces to other areas, into communities that have been just forgotten for so long, into more training for social workers, for paramedics, for EMTs, and even for police. And it's making their job easier. But I think when people just chant the term defund the police, I think that's why it throws people off, and why some people are so against it. But I'm not. I'm all for it.
No, I like your answer. I really do. I do. Um, okay, so kind of getting back onto the race questions. So how does the racial dynamic of Muncie compare to your hometown?
Muncie, I have not gotten the opportunity to really go out into like Muncie itself, but focusing on like Ball State is so much more diverse than Noblesville, and I love it. Not even just racially diverse, just, I mean, in Noblesville, there's not a lot of gay people that live here. And at Ball State, you can see members of the LGBT community proudly owning their identities, and I think that's amazing. And like, there's in Noblesville, there's very few women in leadership positions. At Ball State, our vice provost is a woman of color, and it's so much more diverse, just like intersectionally diverse, and I love it.
Speaking of oops, diversity. So back in Noblesville, do you think that there are ways, or what ways do you think it could become more diverse? And could be in general, or it could be in like schools, or since you went to high school in Noblesville. So what do you think could be, well, we could focus on schools since that's what I feel like you probably could more relate to. What do you
Yeah.
think are ways that schools could make their community more diverse, um, and but like truly mean it? Because I don't know about you, but I know for me personally, there are some ways that like schools do things and they're like, it's just not a good way to
Look at Ball State for
get.
that example. I mean, like, what was it last year? The business professor that called the cops on a black student for not moving seats, and he's still employed. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Oh, but Ball State has a good commitment to diversity. Yeah, bullshit. For lack of better terms. Um, no, I totally get what you mean though, with like the cloud over it, just like covering it up with a pretty bow. And
Right.
they always focus on like the institution's commitment to diversity, and yeah, I get what you mean. But to answer your question, I think a way that communities, or like schools such as Noblesville, could become more diverse is, so I don't know if you're familiar with this. I only am because I'm interested in like urban planning and stuff because of my major. Um, so in order to go to a school in a certain area, it's all based off of like income taxes. So like only people in Noblesville pay income taxes that go to Noblesville High School. I think if there's a way that we could rework the tax system, and it would make it so, say, students on the north side of Indy could go to Noblesville High School if they wanted to. I think that could be a way to make it a lot more diverse. Again, not even just racially, but like socioeconomically, especially. Um, because Noblesville is a very wealthy community, and there, I think, I think even if we just expose it to more like wealth, different like socioeconomic diversity, I think that would bring with it other forms of diversity as well, and I think it would just keep going. Um, so like there's restructuring the tax ways. I think getting like education too is huge. I think social justice courses would help promote diversity, and maybe students who are uncomfortable with their gender or sexual identity would feel more comfortable about coming out about that. Or, and then that education could even extend to like parents too in the community. Like the school could host programs that explain that, because schools are super afraid to do anything that's like, unless it's like a college, schools are really afraid to be like, oh, we support this or we support that. And it's like, I don't think they should be afraid to support something that their students identify with, whether it be race, gender, sexual identity, socioeconomic status, whatever. I don't think schools should, I don't think funding should be threatened if schools chooses to support that. And I think all schools should support that. I also think better access to counseling. Because, you know, you have those counselors that really, really care, but then you also have those counselors that are like, get out of my face. And
Yep.
I think if we could find a way to make it so all counselors really, really care, and obviously pay is a big part of that, because teachers and counselors, I mean, they get paid nothing. And I think that could help promote diversity. Almost just making people feel more comfortable with who they are, almost, and allowing them to own it and not squashing it. Like, if you know what I mean. Like
don't like make them
don't make them
not,
feel like they
not feel hurt or like
don't make them feel like they have to get rid of their individuality to fit in. Like, and that's a huge thing, obviously. I mean, that's not even just a Noblesville thing. That's everywhere. But I feel like if there are ways that we can find to promote that sort of message, I feel like we would see more diversity, because I feel like people would be more comfortable with declaring who they are. Whether, again, intersectionally, you know, race, sexual orientation, gender, socioeconomic status.
So you made me think of a couple of questions, and hopefully I can remember them both. Now I know you did say, I'm thinking back on what you said previously before. You had mentioned basically saying that like Noblesville, they don't, I guess, openly support LGBTQ plus. I don't know if is that view, would you agree with that? Or
I would agree with that.
okay.
I would think they support it, but they will never publicly say that.
So, go ahead.
No, like, if you know what I mean by that. Like, they'll support you on it, and they're not gonna like denounce it, but they will never support it, like, publicly. They'll never release a statement that says, like, we stand by our students who identify with this.
They'll just kind of allow people to do it, but not say their part. But leading in or talking about that, do you think that there's certain things that the community could do to, I mean, I know they could literally say, like, you know, we support LGBTQ plus, but I don't know. What I'm trying to say is, like, do you think there's ways that they can be more inclusive of LGBTQ plus, or make them feel more comfortable and accepted into their community?
I think this would definitely be a thing that would have to fall on like the younger people, because obviously our generation is way more open to it and like accepting of people who of the LGBTQ community. So like, say younger people hold pride parades, or like a pride event for Pride Month or something, and within that event they tie in like education on the community. And because a lot of people in Noblesville are like fundamentalist Christian, and they think it's a choice. And if they could, because it is obviously not a choice, who would choose to be oppressed? That, like, and I feel like if they're able to provide education to those people and try to open their eyes to it, I think that could help to make people feel more welcome and accepted in the community. I think this would be something that would have to take years. Like, it would take years to accomplish. Like, year after year, they'd have to do this. Because people are so resistant to change everywhere. And that's a great question. I'm struggling to answer it.
No, you're good. I think you're answering it good, actually. You're good.
It would be tough. I mean, because so many people are just so against it and so not open-minded when it comes to uh, accepting the LGBTQ community. Um, it would just be a long process.
Yeah. So continuing off of that, do you think there are, in your opinion, do you think there is like a city or community in Indiana entirely that is more accepting of the LGBTQ plus community, or would you feel like Indiana is just like in general is there's none?
I feel like if any city in Indiana were to truly be accepting, like fully, of the LGBTQ community, I feel like it would be Indianapolis.
Hmm.
Um, it's our largest city. It's probably our most diverse city. I'm not sure on that, but if I had to assume, which is dangerous, obviously, but if I had to assume, I would think Indianapolis is our most diverse city. And just the fact that I think Indianapolis and Muncie and maybe Bloomington are the only three cities in Indiana that hold pride events. And Indy is Indy, and then Muncie and Bloomington are both college towns, so that makes more sense. And both of those pride events are set up by the universities or students from the university. So, but I would go with Indianapolis.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I only asked that. Well, I guess this kind of gives it away. I'm in Indianapolis, so I know they have held the Pride event before, but I didn't know if they're with. I don't know too much about like LGBTQ plus, and like events and things like that. So I just knew they held one here, but I didn't know if like anywhere else in Indiana was more. I guess had more events or was bigger on it than us. So that's all.
I don't know if Indiana is really. I don't think it's very accepting of it, to say the least. I mean, Mike Pence was our governor. Um,
Hmm.
the connotations with that. Indianapolis, I guess. I don't live in Indy, so I wouldn't know. I know they hold Pride. That's about it. Um,
Hmm.
I get a model city in the country. I think might be like San Francisco. San Francisco, I know, is very accepting of like the LGBTQ community. Um, that Portland, maybe New York, not sure.
Interesting. Okay, well, we'll dive into a little bit of a different conversation, um, and talk about privilege. So what is your perspective on privilege, and what are some of your privileges?
My perspective on it, like, do I think it's real? Like, the
Yeah.
people. Oh, I yes, I think it's real. Um, and my privileges that I have, obviously, I have white privilege. I have male privilege too. I I have those two privileges, which are huge.
Hmm.
And I think it's important that I recognize that and that understand that I don't face a lot of discrimination, if any, for the color of my skin or my gender or who I am or what I look like. But I feel like a lot of white people and white men especially don't recognize their privilege, and it hurts people who don't have the same privilege.
Interesting. That's I like the response. Um, So, have you ever had to talk with people? Like, have you ever been in a situation where you've had to talk to someone about privilege, like, kind of made them recognize their privilege in a certain situation, or just in general have had to talk about it with someone else?
Um, so I was with my dad, and I was trying to talk to. This was in like May. This was right after George Floyd was killed, Breonna Taylor was killed, and like this is when people finally started to wake up
Mm.
to the injustice in our country that has never gone away. And so I was talking to him about, and I brought up privilege, and he was like, he at first, I think it's because he didn't know what it was, and he was like, "Well, my life has been super hard, like." Because he grew up poor, and it's like he's had to work his way up to his master's in teaching, and like he's worked very hard. And I'm like, I had to explain to him, I'm like, the reason your life was hard was not because like you didn't face challenges because of what you look like, because he's a white male too,
Mm-hmm.
because of the color of your skin or because of the color of your hair. You didn't face challenges because of that. That's what privilege is. You don't decide what privilege you have, you're born with it. It is, you can't help the privilege you have, but what you can help, this is like me explaining to him, what you can help is whether or not you acknowledge your privilege and use your privilege and your place of privilege to help those who don't have the amount of privilege that you have. And after I explained that to him, he understood, and he still understands, which is a good thing. So I was actually able to break through to him, which I was really happy about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was probably my most prominent example of having to explain privilege to someone else.
I'm I'm taking it in. I love you. I love it. I love it. I love everything. I love people who can educate like older adults, not just older adults, but like anybody about reality. Like
Yeah,
it is what it is.
the reality we live in. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's great. Um, Now do you think, and this has been pretty common, in my personal opinion, that the older generation is, I guess, a little more against acknowledging privilege than like the younger people. Um, what First, would you believe that that is true, that they're less likely to acknowledge their privilege? And if
yeah,
you do believe that, then why do you think that is?
uh, I do agree with you on that for sure. Um, and I think the reason for that might just be because of the access of information. So we live in the era of information, of technology. We have access to all the information we could ask for in our hand. Our generation knows that. They didn't, I think part of the reason they're so against like the ideas that they believe is because they didn't grow up with that. And like now when we say that we found this thing on the internet, they're like, well, you can't believe everything you read in the internet. Like, read a newspaper. I'm like, what's the difference? I'm like, I read this from a newspaper article. Like, I feel like they almost don't trust the information from technology. And I feel like that's a problem because obviously there's information on the internet that you can't believe and you can't take seriously. But there's a lot of information on the internet that is very prevalent and up to date. And I think that's the biggest thing, is up to date, because the information that they got growing up and even 20 years ago, it's so outdated even now. And they just hold on to it. And I don't know why. Um, I just, I almost think it's just a generational thing. Like they hold on to their ideals,
Hmm.
which in a twisted way can be admirable. They hold on to their values, but there's a point where you have to change. And I'm not saying the entire generation, but most of them are resistant to it. I mean, the phrase "okay, boomer" doesn't come from nowhere. Um, like it's like I don't even know why. Just lack of information, I guess.
Hmm.
Stubbornness. Like I think,
Sorry.
no, you're good. I
Yeah.
think they also view our generation as lazy because we have so much things, I guess, and I feel like they just disregard everything we say. They're like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're too young." I
Hmm.
think that's also a big reason because a lot of the times we're trying to educate them. I don't think they like that. I think they feel like it shifts the power dynamic. Like, oh, you should respect your elders. I'm like, agreed, but you should also respect someone who's more informed than you, which a lot of the times, especially on areas of social justice, race, LGBTQ rights, human rights in general, our generation seems to be more up to speed, I guess.
So now, I don't know how much of an age gap you have between like you and your dad or like you and your grandfather. Um, but let's just say when we like our generation becomes older, or like the when like your dad, for instance, becomes like, I don't know, in his 80s or something, um and you might be I don't know, 40 something, I don't know, you get what I
Right.
mean. Roughly somewhere around there. Do you think that at that time, do you think that our country would, like, kind of, how do you think our country might change? And I know we can't predict the future, but how do you think it might change with the way that our generation kind of thinks of various issues like race and things like that?
I think I think we're bound to see our country grow to be more progressive than it ever has been before. Because I do think the majority of our generation is progressive and more left leaning. Um, I am. I don't know about you, but um, I think we. I think we're gonna at least be able to see the start of race becoming a past idea. Because I feel like a lot of people in our generation already, like, I feel like people in older generations see race as like such a dividing factor and such a big issue. And it is like racism is a huge issue, but I don't think race itself is that big of an issue. Do you know what I mean by saying that?
Let me hear. Oh, do you mean like, so the younger generation doesn't? I don't want to say doesn't see color, but like,
Yeah, I know what you
like,
mean.
I don't want to say that, but like they like
I know the connotations with
color
saying
does not determine whether or not they like somebody or not. For instance, that's what I mean.
that.
And what you're saying is like the older generation does view
I
color
almost,
as like a negative kind of.
yeah, I almost feel not even that the older generation is like, not even that they're racist. I almost feel like they hold like prejudice. Like,
Mhm.
I guess that's what racism is. Wow. Um, I guess I
Sorry.
feel like they have. I feel like they hold. Almost going back to the idea of microaggressions, I feel like they hold like stereotypes of different races, and like every time they see someone of a different race, they kind of, obviously not speaking for the whole generation because you can't do that, but you know, I feel like they apply those stereotypes right away. Where I feel like in our generation, most of us at least don't do that. Like, so I feel like, to get back to my point, to get back to your question, I feel like we're going to start to see the idea of race become more a thing of the past and start to see racism hopefully becoming less and less of an issue and less like I guess hopefully I'm saying I'm hoping we see people become less racist and becoming more anti-racist. Because it's not enough to be not racist anymore. Because that's almost like standing on the sidelines in a fight. Like, you have to be actively anti-racist, and I think we're gonna be able like start to see people grow to become anti-racists, especially with all of the new books and publications and articles coming out about anti-racism. Because like even before May, I never heard that before. Um, so that's like in regards to race, I guess. And I think we're going to see obviously technology advance even further. I'm hoping we're going to see environmentalism be taken more seriously. I'm a big of oh God, I'm a big environmentalist. Um, So I'm hoping we'll see that. I'm hoping we'll see our kids even grow up to be more accepting of everyone than even our generation is. Um, yeah, I'm just hoping to see a better world.
Yes, we are all hoping. We're all hoping. um, okay, I thought of another question, so I'm going to backtrack quite a bit to when we were talking about policing and defunding the police, that whole issue. So one thing that I personally thought of is police training. I don't know exactly how it goes, but do you think that and I don't know for sure like how police officers are hired and things like that. But do you think that there could be something, do you think that like maybe their training could somehow change, or do you think that there's, I guess just do you think that there's things that they can incorporate to I don't want to say decrease police brutality, but like educate them more on racism? I'm trying to think of where I'm going. I know where I'm going. It's just how do I say it? I say this because like there's police brutality is an issue, and like police officers, I guess for me personally, police officers, in my opinion, when they like commit these kind of crimes, they don't. It just
They,
seems like they're not maybe they're not educated to a certain extent on a certain issue, or like maybe they don't see like Black people as equally human to uh, white people. Like I don't know, but do you think there's somehow they can incorporate some sort of education or something in their training to help, we'll just say help decrease police brutality and these crimes? Or what do you think could help decrease these crimes?
um, I already said education. I think that could help. Just because I think when you are required to get a 4-year degree, I think you're exposed to different people. Like you meet new people from different backgrounds, and I think that would just help. Um, as far as our training goes, I don't really know much about police training. But I'm sure I'm sure someone who's more educated on the topic and educated on the topics that we're discussing could come up with ways to incorporate things into their training to help fix this issue of police brutality against minorities. Um,
I know we like I know it's kind of a tough question because like
yeah,
we're not police officers. We don't know what the training is like. So no, I just wanted to know kind of roughly what your thoughts, or it's
yeah.
okay if you don't know for sure because like I said, we're not police officers.
I think also our police are so like militarized compared to other countries. I mean, because like when our military retires military equipment, they give it to our police forces. I'm sorry, they don't need that.
Mm.
Yes, for maybe dire emergencies. That's why you have the National Guard. Like that's why you have the military and Homeland Security. You have that. Our police officers don't need to have assault rifles. So I mean, also just the presence alone of an assault rifle, I can actually attest to this, doesn't help the situation. So when I was a sophomore in high school, the middle school in Noblesville had a shooting, and we went on lockdown because there was a bomb threat and a shooting threat at our school, and so we went on code red lockdown, like totally shut down, and we were each escorted out one at a time when our parents came to get us. And just lining the halls, these police officers in riot gear with huge assault rifles. And I'm sorry, but it did not help the situation at all. It didn't help. I get what they were doing. They were trying to make you feel protected, but you didn't. You felt threatened. I felt threatened. A lot of people felt threatened. I actually wrote a paper on this, short paper, but I wrote in high school. I wrote a paper about this because, like, they came in searching for these two high schoolers, and my friend Tina was in the classroom they came into, and they went up to every single student who was cowering behind a desk because we were in lockdown, with their assault rifles pointed at them and said, "Put your hands in the air or you'll be shot." And it's like, what? I'm like,
Um,
hold up.
the
I'm
police
like, that is,
officer said this to students.
yes, to every student.
Oh
Every student.
my
I'm like, what? I'm like, what is going through your head to where you would say that to a student who is already afraid, has already texted his or her mom saying, "I love you," thinking that there's an intruder in their school?
Mm-hmm.
Like, ugh, it makes me heated just thinking about that.
Me too. Yeah.
I think there's a thing in their training, include a portion to where it educates them on what to say. So I'm an EMT. I'm a registered EMT.
Hmm.
We had to take a course. Like, part of our course was bedside manner, dealing with people, talking to people, what to say, what not to say, specifically what not to say. There's an example of what you shouldn't say. I don't know if this already exists, but if it does, it needs to be drastically increased, drastically revised, and improved upon. So there's one example to answer your question with the very little education on police training that I have, but oh.
No, that's do you think, I know this isn't I guess policies in regards to like dealing with racism and anti-racism, but do you think that there could be a policy made in regard to the use of weapons? I don't know if it already exists, or in regard to the use of weapons by police. Like, what kind of policy do you think that the police force needs? And you can disregard whatever exists already.
I'm not sure if any policy already exists, but I feel like, obviously, going back to like the demilitarization of our police, I feel like they don't need to have assault rifles. Or there needs to be policy written to where it is very, very, very specific situations where they're allowed to even bring those with them. Or, because I mean, like, if there is someone shooting at police with an assault rifle, their little handgun won't do much. But I don't know, this because I don't think they need them. I think it's for more the National Guard type thing, but the response time of the National Guard is not what our police is. And it's like, you'd have to increase the response time of the National Guard and of I don't know what other groups exist, but it'd be very complex. It'd be a very complex piece of policy that would have to be written, and it would have to cover a lot of bases. I'm gonna leave it at that.
No, you're good. You're good. So no, that was good. I was just interested in, thoughts on the police situations.
Yeah.
So we'll go forward and fast forward to when we were talking about privilege again. So I know you. Okay, actually, never mind. Hang on. Hmm. Okay, so how diverse is your family? Or like, what are the ethnicities included in your family?
My cousins are like 1/8 or 1/4 Native American. That's about it. That's really it. That and white. My family's not very diverse.
Okay. It's perfectly fine. No, that's fine. That is fine. Um, just curious. So when we talked about, what did we talk about? We talked about if you had to have a conversation with somebody about privilege. Has someone ever had to have a conversation with you about privilege? Or have you ever been confronted about your own privilege? And if so, what was that like?
I've never been confronted about it, but I mean, when I was first learning about it, yeah, people had conversations with me about it just so I could understand it. But I've never been confronted about my privilege. I guess, for lack of better words, I've never been told to check my privilege, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Um, trying to think what do I want to ask next. um, okay, so how I know we discussed oh maybe we didn't discuss this on privilege. I don't know. I'll just ask. What are ways that people can did I ask you what are ways people can be more educated on privilege?
Mhm.
I did. Okay. I was gonna say I didn't know if it was that on that or something else. Um wow, wow. Hmm. Well, we can dive into another topic.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, what just happened? Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Oops.
I could stop yawning. Oh my god.
You're good. You're perfectly fine. um okay, so here's one thing that I think we all, not all of us know, but we kind of know. Is that no one is not racist. like no one is not racist, basically, just period. So sorry. So I say that to say, so have you ever had to, if you, well, just thinking on, tell me if I've asked you this. I'm sorry, I cannot keep track of what I asked you.
Okay.
Have you ever committed a racist act before that you can think of?
All that I can think of. Um,
It's okay if you
I'm sure I've,
can.
I'm sure I've committed microaggressions before,
hmm
which in itself is racist. Um, but that wasn't intentional. Um, Not that I can think of.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay if you can't. Um, well, here's what I asked, like, what do you do for yourself to like stop yourself from committing a racist act or stop yourself from committing a microaggression? I know you said you could stop yourself, but like what exactly, like what do the steps kind of look like for you to like
Well,
stop?
the biggest thing is I just listen to what I'm saying and I think about it before I say it. And like, if I catch myself on one, I tell myself, I'm like, you idiot. They're not a representative for who they are. Like, they're not some ambassador. Like, what the hell? Like,
That's
this is all internal thoughts, but it's just like, what are you asking? It's like, what? Don't ask that.
mhm.
And then I just don't. All right, I don't ask that, and then I ask something else that is not that.
Just better phrase something that's yeah. I
Better
know
phrase, so it's not a microaggression. So it's like,
more
so it is,
informative and
yeah, more like not asking someone like, so what's or like saying, "Oh, you're really pretty for a black girl," like, and
Mm-hmm.
not saying I've never said that. First of all, I've never even almost said that. Just that was purely for example
No,
purposes.
you're good.
Um, um, I guess making it more like of a universal question.
Mm-hmm.
That, that example I provided was not a question.
But it
And
was a
again,
good
for the
moment.
record, I've never almost even said that. I've never said that or almost said it or anything along the lines of that. Never done that. Not to say that. Um, but yeah, that's my answer.
That's good to know. Uh-oh. I had another question for you. What was it again? It was about okay, so at my high school,
Mhm.
we have done what's called a diversity dialogue. And I don't know if you've been to something similar to this, but you can let me know if you have.
My
Uh,
high school did a diversity dialogue as well. We did one.
oh,
That's it.
so with since you know what it's like, then do you think that they are beneficial? Do you think that like students actually, I mean, you can't force anyone to take in what a speaker is saying, but do you think that they're effective?
I think when they're done correctly, they're effective. So I don't think my school did a great job at it. I know they tried really hard, uh, but I don't. The speaker they brought in, first of all, was white and talking about issues facing minority groups, and I really feel like they should have brought in someone who has maybe experienced those issues to educate us on things like that. Because, and the way my school did it, it was very reactionary. It was not preventative at all. So some idiot had written on a bathroom stall, like, "I'm gonna kill a bunch of N-words."
Oh wow.
Yeah, welcome to Noblesville.
Wow.
Uh, no, the whole school's not like that, but there are people like that, and
Mhm.
so it was the diversity dialogue was like the school's response, and like I feel like in order for a diversity dialogue to be really effective, I feel like it can't be reactionary because then you're only going to focus on that one issue and you're going to call it a day. I think I think they should be like not necessarily scheduled things, but like always available.
Mhm.
Like I feel like a good thing that schools, at least public schools, because I know like the government can't say anything about private schools, but like in public schools, I think having someone who's trained in like I don't know if there's an actual training for like diversity, but like diversity training, having someone on staff who is always like available to talk about things with different students and who has maybe experienced some discrimination in the past so they can relate to it. Like, I feel like that could be effective almost.
Mhm. Um, before we wrap this up, end it. Another question that I did have was about, and I believe we might have talked about this in class too, but with the, um, like when we had the Trump incident with like Trump supporters driving through the school and terrorizing students and things like that. Um, the university sent out a statement, and we have talked about this in class before, I believe. But sent out a statement, and like Dr. Bartley would always talk about how they would end it with like a certain phrase, or like have it's just I forget the phrase, but it's like a specific phrase or sort of goal that the university presidents or something send out, not just for colleges but in high schools and schools lower than that as well. um do you know what I'm talking about with the
It's almost like the schools like saying how committed they are to like diversity and
That's what it is.
inclusion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's what it is. So
At
do
Boston, we always foster this or like the environment of this. Like, you
yeah.
know,
Now how do you think they could, okay, do you think that is something that should be said that is helpful or effective in response to those situations? Um and if you, well, we'll stop there and I'll see what you say and then I'll ask my other question.
I think it's almost like a political thing. So I think I might surprise you with this answer, but I do think it's necessary to include in the letter, at least somewhere in the letter, because if you don't include it, you're gonna have people that are like, "Wait, is Ball State committed to this?" Like, because you have people who don't analyze things like we're doing right now, and I feel like that could almost be used as like a reminder to people who are maybe applying who don't hold values of diversity or inclusion. It's like reminder, our school stands for this. If you don't apply here, don't come here. I
Mhm.
know it's not like that. It's not geared to be like that, but I almost feel like it could be used like that. I feel like there's a better way that it could be communicated. I was decently surprised or decently happy with the response of the university with increasing the shuttle services and the bus schedules, but they only did it through Thanksgiving, and I'm like, make it a permanent thing. And like, I don't know. I feel like there's more they could have done. I feel like in regards to that issue, they did a decent job. Uh, because it's a tough thing to deal with, obviously.
It is.
But like I feel like they acknowledged it, but they almost didn't acknowledge it, like the issue.
They just
They like
went
they went around it.
the base, like sugarcoat kind of, or just did the base
Yeah,
on what was required.
they
Yeah.
like sugar. I feel like they sugarcoated the issue versus more of what it actually was.
Mm.
Where I don't know if you saw the letter written by the Big Four in student government. Did you see that?
Think I might have. I think I did on Instagram, maybe. And then
That's why
president's one through email. Mm-hmm.
uh, that letter I think was incredibly made, and I think like they outlined things they wanted done
Mm-hmm.
like now, and if the university had just done what they asked or found a way to incorporate it within the next week, I feel like their response would have been 10 times better. Like, because then they would actually have been listening to their students. And so I'm in student government. Like, that body is what the voices of the student, where the voices of the students are heard by the university. So, like, and like the Big Four all have representative, like, they all have senators in student government. So like there are caucuses, so I'm in the at-large caucus, so I represent like the whole university, but like there are organizational caucuses and like organizational senators, and each of the Big Four have a senator. So like SGA is where the university listens, and the university didn't fully listen, and it's like you have to listen to the concerns of your students. If they're telling you something is happening or minority groups are being harassed and getting bottles thrown at them, something is detrimentally wrong. And you need to do more than just increase bus service.
Mm-hmm. So my last question for you is, so do you think with the like response that was given and the typical responses that universities and high schools and things like that include in their emails, in particular with Ball State, do you think that although they say that they promote diversity and inclusion, do you think on campus that's actually what it is? Like, are they actually living up to that? Or there's
I
always room for improvement for anyone, but do you think they're
Yeah,
living up to it?
I think there's always room for improvement in regards to Ball State specifically. I think the majority of the campus does an amazing job at this. Um, especially in DHO. So I'm president of DHO. I don't know if you knew that,
Oh,
but so
I didn't know.
I love DHO. Um, I have never once seen any sort of, just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't happen, obviously. But I've never seen any discrimination around like DHO or around. I've never physically seen discrimination on campus, which is a good thing. Again, just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it didn't happen. But I think overall, like the university administration does a good job. Um, and I know like there are constraints where they can't always do what the students want. I think they do a good job. I think they try to do what they can to listen to the students and the students' concerns. I think the students overall do a phenomenal job of promoting like diversity and inclusion on campus. I mean, obviously, there are some that don't, um, but I don't want to say that like I was just always going to be like that because I think that's a horrible answer for something. Like that's almost like answering, well, that's just the way it is, and calling it a day. I'm like, well, that's a bad response. Like, but I'm gonna use that bad response, and I feel like I feel like you're never fully gonna be able to 100% change everyone and educate everyone because I think some people are just so resistant to change and learning things about diversity and inclusion that it's impossible. But overall, I think the university does a great job. I think the students do a great job. I think professors specifically, overall, disregarding the situation that happened last year, and I think overall professors do a really good job promoting diversity. Especially, so I'm only really around like architecture professors and honors professors. Like CAP does an amazing job with diversity. Honors does a good job with diversity. Like I've never had my privilege. Obviously, I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I've never seen problems with it. So, but again, just because I don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It's like I feel like it's never gonna be 100%, but I think it's pretty good.
No, it's good to know. That is good to know. Well, we will wrap it up here.
All right.
So it was great interviewing you and nice to meet you again.
Good interviewing you, and nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Okay.